As always, it is just wonderful to see where you're all coming from, and also, wow, some familiar names. I'm really grateful for the people who pop in every month and join us. And today is a little bit different. We did do an early years session a few months ago, but this one is more focusing on phonological awareness and the resources you can use as in an early years practice or setting. And also, if you have got Jolly Phonics resources, how you can use them with the younger learners and within your setting. Maybe have a wish list of things that you would like to have within a nursery bundle. As we've known for a very long time, then part of the early years structure that children being able to have an awareness of sounds is extremely important. And also doing that, being able to provide some kind of foundation for them. And as we do this as early years practitioners, sometimes we need to have a foundation in that we have planning, and other times we can go along with different methodologies that can help us do this. Right, so as I was saying, sometimes we need to be able to follow some kind of structure. With children in early years, it can be difficult because we are aware that there has so much that children also need to do and what we want to do with them. So apart from that, it's also looking at how we can address what we can understand from using phonics. We can put in sorry, I'm having a problem with my PowerPoint. Whoopsie. Just bear with me 1 second. I've got a cursor come up that shouldn't be there. Oh dear. There we go. I think I'm okay now, Ollie. I keep getting an annotation screen coming up. Are you seeing the annotation screen coming up?
No, we're good.
You're good? Okay. So what's in the session? We're going to have a look at the general dynamics of Jolly Phonics and what it brings to any kind of program that we're doing. We do have a big range of programs to suit your teaching environment, a unique teaching environment. But today we're focusing on children who are underneath the reception time. So you have children who are in reception. We're going to look at that, but it's what foundations can we be bringing to support them with their learning. But more than anything, it's helping guide you on what we can do and how we can do it. So, first of all, it's always great to say that this is an endorsed program that has got all the rigorous testing that is required for the Department of UK Education. And when I say that, it means that we are meeting all the benchmarks that are required, that children are getting the right delivery of phonics and literacy implementation in the planning and also the classroom setting for the right amount of acquisition needed for children between the ages of 4 upwards. But that also means children who are younger as well. So the one thing we have got is a rigorous system which is helping children, and also one that is easy to follow. And of course, what we want in early years is something that is flexible, something that can fit in with the flow of what we're doing with children. We're also looking at how we can scaffold children's knowledge of letters and sounds, but also thinking about early years. They're very young children. So we want to embrace that and embody it with activities, arts and crafts, gross and fine motor skill development. And of course, little children need to have fun. So again, when we look at the program, what we are seeing is a program that has been developed by teachers for teachers, keeping in mind of the classroom atmosphere where we know there has to be fun. So early in the year, what do you need to know? And you're probably joining our session today because you're either using Jolly Phonics, and it'd be good if you could put in the chat if you are already using Jolly Phonics or if it's the first time that you have been introduced to Jolly Phonics. So let us know in the chat and Ollie can feedback that information to me. If you are using Jolly Phonics, maybe you're thinking about using it in early years where we go down a little bit. So, as I said, what do you need to know about using Jolly Phonics with children who are in early years? It is important that you have the teacher knowledge. So you will see that I'm highlighting up the teacher's book because although the teacher's book does do the next stage, what it has is a brilliant introduction in where you can see how it all comes together, how we start, how we move on, and also what the desired outcomes are. We must remember that there is a point to what we're teaching. It will also give you some guidance on planning. Again, you will destructure that so it's not so heavy and it's also a little bit more fluid, and I'll talk about that as we move on. It's also important to understand what your expectations are with very small children. We have to be mindful that their pace of learning can be accelerated and it can also slow down. We also are working with children who may have English as an additional language, which is not so unique now. In the UK, we have schools where we have many languages and children are speaking their home language in their home environment. So English may be the only place that they have at school where they can talk about using the vocabulary and also hearing the letter sounds. And sometimes we've got to be mindful of research. And at Jolly Learning, we are always inviting research to really give us access to understanding how the program works even better. So the one thing we do say is, as a teacher, know exactly where you're going with the Jolly Phonics program. This is extremely helpful because you'll have your ending point and you'll also have your beginning, your starting point, and you'll know how to move that along if you're doing it by a 1 year or a 2 year planning schema. But also when we look at the children, what we do have to be mindful of is their cognitive ability. We hear a lot today about cognitive overload and how we're trying to cram so much into children. And this is why we use different methodologies like loose parts or in the moment planning, where we're following the child's keen interest and being able to say, this is a sound, and really express their interest at that moment, because we know with small children, it's gone, poof, just like that. Also looking for our learning and teaching opportunities, and also phonemic awareness. What does that mean? How am I doing that in my early years setting? And what resources can I use to support that? So many of you who know the Jolly Phonics program are very familiar with our 42 sounds. Of course, we don't start with the alphabet, and children come with the alphabet, but that's okay. That's okay. But what we are focusing on are the 7 groups of the 42 sounds that are in this order. But what you will notice is that when we get to group 4, we suddenly have 2 letters that make one sound, and that can be a huge leap for very young children. So we're doing things at a much slower pace, and also we're helping children understand with that curiosity that that squiggle also has a sound. And that sound can be put next to another squiggle that has a sound, and they're slowly building up their knowledge. We're scaffolding. And as you can see, we've got 42 sounds. And if we are working with older children, they probably get through these 42 sounds at a very quick pace because they have the knowledge that a letter is a sound. And with young children, we have to slow this down. So we also look at the 5 key skills of the Jolly Phonics program. Now, in early years, we understand that we are not addressing all the 5 key skills explicitly. That would be a huge amount of effort for very small children. But what we are doing is looking at learning the letter sounds and also the letter formation. We will be orally modeling and demonstrating how to do blending and segmenting, but we would not be expecting the children to be doing that explicitly when they're so young. And they will be hearing tricky words. They'll be hearing them in the sentences that you model, the stories that they hear, and also their responses. Again, we're not explicitly naming them, but we are using them. So even if we're doing things passively or explicitly, we are using the 5 skills to a greater or lesser degree every time we are interacting with the children, and we are having a focus lesson where we zoom in, or we're doing it's an environmental lesson where it's incidental and we're also highlighting a sound. It's a great way for young children to pick up the letter sounds and also make a connection with the letter shape. So if we look at our stages, many of you are probably familiar with this, and I'm going to ask for you to put in the chat box, which stage are you working with? Are you working with reception, which is 4 to 5 years, or nursery or early years? And Ollie, if you could have a look in the chat box and tell me, are we getting any answers to this, or how many are in reception?
We got lots of reception and starting to see some people working across both and nursery. Yeah, some people
Okay,
across
lovely.
both. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's really helpful because if you are familiar with working with reception, you understand the pace and what is required by the curriculum to implement phonics from the beginning of the academic year to the end. Now, when we look at nursery and early years, we can slow that down considerably. And also, one thing we've got to be mindful of is that as we are building up that foundation, we need to use something that is structured. We are kind of mirroring what is going to happen in reception, but we don't want to give it all away so that the children, when they move on to that structured program, are bored and they've heard the sounds, they've seen everything, they find it repetitive. We want to do it in a way that is paced nicely and also that lovely word of scaffolding and of course multisensory, which are helping with children's desired learning outcomes. And also, the one good thing about the program is if you have children who are joining at different parts of the academic year, they can quickly pick up. And again, once they move to reception, we have that solid foundation where they can really go on to revisiting the sounds once again. But this time it's more concrete. This time they have more knowledge. And this time they're able to do the tasks that are required in the pupils book. But when we think about phonics in early years, we have this phonemic awareness. And certainly within the program, children are asked to look at and read, no, look and orientate themselves around letter sounds and letter shapes. But a key factor to early years curriculum is environmental sounds, where children are making sense of the world around them. They're listening, they're making sense of that bee that they can hear, also noises like traffic. They're engaged with songs and using language, and their curiosity with books begin. But more than anything, in layering this foundation where they are growing their awareness, it is a great time to introduce the awareness of sounds of letters. While children are on this learning journey of listening to stories, doing their topic, interacting with each other, it's a great time also to introduce the sounds and then how to support that. Many of you are probably familiar with topic bags or theme bags that when we do a letter sound, you support that with visuals. What we have to remember is that when we go into the reception year, children are doing more challenging tasks as we're asking them to listen to a letter sound that may be at the beginning and the middle and the end. This is quite challenging for children in early years, so we are really looking at the initial sounds and making associations with that. And you will find that in our resource pack for nursery that we have the picture flashcards that really help children focus. So we're taking children on this lovely journey, as you can see, where they're getting to know all the sounds. They're making connections with the sounds they hear, and we're naming those sounds. Those sounds are also becoming part of their daily routine. So we are giving a very gentle introduction using Jolly Phonics, and we're also wrapping this around stories. Now, I mentioned stories, but I'm not referring to the Jolly Phonics stories. We want to keep those for reception. We could dip into one or two of them so that children can get used to the way we deliver phonics. You can have that lovely passive interaction, but we don't want to go into it too profoundly because when they move on to reception, we want them to be able to enjoy that journey, having a story with every letter sound and using that not only for vocabulary, but also using those skills of observation, comprehension, and listening. When we start with early years, we want children to listen to a variety of stories, and these may be linked to topic. We could also find stories that are linked to the wall freeze, where we have the snake. We could have children playing games. You can find stories that support that. And I think it's one thing that we would do is find a way to have engaging stories so that children can also relate this to other areas of their learning. And we have some tips in the bumper book on great stories you could use to support letter sound acquisition. But also, not only through that, children need to have multisensory activities so that they are experimenting with what they know. But as a practitioner, what do you need to know? I've mentioned that knowing the program is really helpful because if you know where you're starting and where you're going, then you have a clear trajectory on how to plan. You may think that for my first year with 3 to 4 year olds, I might only be able to get through half of the sounds. That's okay. Remember, what we are doing is getting children on board with their knowledge of letter shapes and letter sounds. That's a huge leap when you're 2, 3, or 4 years old. So getting any scaffolding in where the children are having the sounds and the music, they're doing the air letters, is a great foundation for that next leap when we are getting them engaged and learning to use that knowledge and also handwriting. It can be used with the wider curriculum, and many early years settings, as I've mentioned, use in the moment planning or loose parts. And these are lovely methodologies where phonics is dripped in to suit that child as they are going through that moment. We call it the wow moment, where they're suddenly invested in something like a bird feeder, and we're saying it's a bird. Can you do the b sound? Can we do the air letter? So as children are engaged in that learning moment, what a great time to introduce the air letter. What a great time to really express the letter sound in a meaningful way because the child is making that association. And with loose parts, we love the fact that children can go back and edit their work. They can revisit what they've done, and they also engage with letter sounds. So some of you may be using that, and Jolly Phonics slips into that and other methodologies that you're using very easily, and it doesn't take a lot of extra planning. And the one thing also is that with your planning for this readiness, you can structure it into a timetable that you have your zooming in. And when I mean zooming in, that means that you are focusing on revising the letter sounds that children know, but also giving them the visual cues to support this. And this also really facilitates assessment and evaluation. We have a great tool within our Jolly Classroom app, which is assessment, but this is really for older children. But you may be able to use elements of it to support your assessment. But also, as you are thinking about your planning, think about what you are building in, but also what you are expecting. Now, many of you probably recognize that when we have a child born in January, they're completely different to the child born in December. And you can give me a thumbs up if you are resonating with that, because you probably know that's a huge arc of learning. And also how we have to make sure that as we are going a little bit further, look, I can see those thumbs up. So many of you are resonating with that, that as we are moving forward, we are also going a little bit backward. And that is something that is built in. Thank you for the thumbs up. That is built into the program, that as we are moving forward, we're always keeping an eye back on what has been done. So it's a great way, isn't it, for the children? So your resources. So you might say, I've I've got a load of resources, and as a school, we're thinking, how could we bring this down to early years? Well, you can select the resources that you need, but we do have a suggested bundle, and the suggested bundle highlights the resources we think would really fit into your early years setting. And also, you don't have to worry about sharing. But also, you've got things that you can use from one year to the next that are investment tools. you'll never have to buy them again for a while, because if you've got the freeze, if you buy a new freeze, that's absolutely great for children to have that visual connection. Also, you can use the songs. Of course, you can use the songs. The children love the songs. You may be keen to use the Jolly Classroom app if your school has it. And I'm going to show you how you can distill that into short little bursts of activity for children, because many early years settings are really concerned about children having a lot of screen time. So if we can use it in a meaningful way for children to gain that essential knowledge that they use, it can be extremely supportive within your early years setting. And always remember that we do need that multi-sensory opportunities where children can use plasticine, the sand trays, and also play around with plastic tiles. The 3D, they're tactile, we can play around with them. And we have the visual cards, the lovely, lovely illustrated flashcards that we can use. So one of the most successful ways for children to actually engage with letter sounds is combining phonics with arts and crafts. And this is an opportunity for children to do things that they may never get the opportunity to do at home. Not only is it engaging so many different areas of the curriculum, they're learning math, they're learning language, they're learning about control, they're learning about how to use their fingers, developing their fine motor skills. They're actually working together, children. So what we want to do is make early literacy fun and engaging and memorable for children. But as I've mentioned, with some of the activities we're going to look at, and I want you to participate with me here in my next couple of slides, it also promotes skill building, transferable skills, and that's what it's all about. Although we're teaching phonics and literacy, language, children are making connections to other areas of the curriculum. And this is what foundation stage is about, how children are using language. And also, if your children have got English as an additional language, what better way to do it effortlessly through an activity where the language is being delivered by the practitioner or teacher in the activity, and the children are receptive because they are working with the language, they are working with the teacher, and we can drip in incidental sounds. That's what it's all about. The highest success works with incidental phonics teaching, along with zooming in to having a structured revision and going over time. So think about your planning and how you're going to do that. So we have the wonderful bumper book. So in the chat box, please put a thumbs up or a yes if you have seen our wonderful bumper book. And Ollie, let me know if we're getting some thumbs ups or we're getting
Oh, there you
some
go. You can
yes.
see
Look
them
at
on the
that.
screen.
Yeah, look at that. Look at that. And as you can see, the bumper book is full of wonderful illustrations, and they're covering lots of different things that children can do. And it's not only one way, there are so many different ways that we are looking at stimulating children's knowledge and also getting them engaged with letters and sounds. Look at that. So I'm going to ask you now to join me as we look at this activity on this page. Now, what you can see is we're doing the p sound, and we've got some ideas. And the idea of the bumper book is that we're not saying you have to follow every single activity verbatim, but you know what? You might see an activity on this page and think, you know, I'm going to adapt that. I'm going to change it slightly. I'm going to use it in a way that fits my setting and what I can do. So as you can see there, I'm going to ask you now, as you are such wonderful teachers, what activities could you do to introduce or revise the p sound with arts and crafts? And Ollie is going to keep an eye on the chat box to see what suggestions we've got. Let's see what you can share with everyone. Have we got anyone? Give you a couple of minutes, seconds rather. Any suggestions?
Play-Doh.
Yeah. Now just think about it. You're working with young children. What could we
They're
do?
all coming in now. Here we go.
Whoa. Okay.
Penguin dance.
Let's have two or three, Ollie.
We got penguin dance. We got puppets. We've got popcorn on paper.
Oh, well, I really like the penguin dance, and I wish we could see that, to be honest. And popcorn on paper. Now, see how you are thinking of great ideas, and also how children are hearing that sound. That I like the popcorn and the penguin dance. But also, as you can see here, we are using it in a wider format, but also we don't have to do this with every single letter sound, but it would be good to be able to engage children by using the bumper book, by also thinking about stories and also activities that can be done. And as you can see here, we've moved on to look at this. We've got the P for pirates. We also have some suggestions on having a water tray or make a peacock. And we can have a party, we can paint our portrait, and you can take some of these aspects and distill them down or incorporate them into your planning. But also, if we're doing an activity like this, which is a focus sound, pop in the chat box how many other areas of the curriculum are we also touching by doing an activity such as the peacock or making a water tray for pirates or even just simulating a party with all the plastic teacups and everything. Pop in the chat box what other areas of curriculum could we be crossing over to? And I am waiting for Ollie to let me know.
Oh, we have got general knowledge. We've
Yeah.
got art, science, nature, social studies.
Oh, wow. So as you can see, without even really additionally planning for this, what we are doing is lifting those sounds off that page and giving them life. And as you can see here, we've got children with their pirate's hat on. Isn't that lovely? They're going to remember that sound. He's got a pirate hat on. And here they're playing with peat and they're kind of putting seeds in, as you can see here. So what we've done is extended some of the activities here. Make our own perfume. Okay, well, we don't have perfume in the classroom, but we sure do have a water tray, and the children are filling up make-believe perfume bottles. So this is where, in the moment, where we can really emphasize the initial sound and get children doing that. So this is how we get this environmental learning happening and also using the Jolly Phonics program. What this is reinforced is this is our environmental approach to how we do the letter sounds, but also we want to see how children move with their curiosity. Children will be developing a natural curiosity with letters and their shapes and their sounds. And it usually starts, like you can see in the picture at the bottom there, with their names. They begin to recognize that their name has a shape. They begin to recognize that that big letter at the front is what their name begins with. And they may even recognize that all of those little shapes together actually is their name and they can go to that. We help children with that with a little icon or a color, but we're making that connection. Also, what you've seen is the mark making that is essential as children are experimenting with direction, going up and going down. And of course, we have the plastic letters that it's great for children to feel and touch and tactile resources and having books that they can look at. Now, what do you think we can plan or provide with children at this stage? Now, I'm asking you again to do some work. It's very interactive today. So in the chat box, just imagine you have your 3-year-old who is mark making. They're beginning to make connections and they're also interested in storybooks. What stage do you think they'd be at with our phonics implementation? See if anyone would like to comment in the chat box. Just think, where would we be at? Children are now focusing a little bit more. Do we have any answers, Ollie?
We've got pre-writing stage.
Yes, yes.
We've got blending. Some people are putting reading in there as well.
Yeah, yeah. So children,
CPC, color matching.
yeah. Yeah. So children will be at this stage where they're really promoting these skills. And as you can see here, we've got activities that children are sorting out and they can do straights and curves. This is why we need plastic letters. And this other picture that I've popped up in the corner is a great way to use phonic tiles. You can use our tiles and get children to match and sort. And this could be a collaborative or a pair share activity. But where am I leading you to when we're looking at this, where children are curious and they really want to start practicing? Well, we have our first letter sounds book, which is a great way for children to not only, they have their starting point to not only get the visual cues that support the letters. Now remember, this still is quite a exciting time for children. They're beginning to recognize some of the letter shapes and sounds that may be in their name. They're beginning to make connections with some of the environmental print that they see when they're going home, like McDonald's or KFC. You know, they're seeing all of this environmentally, but also they're making some connection with using the illustrations. Of course, many of them can't read at this point, but what we are doing is giving them the association of the letter sound and also the illustration and the word, which is where the practitioner or teacher comes in, being able to model how we read those words. Could be a small group activity or a carpet activity, helping children know how to use the book. We are modeling how to use the book, directional sweep, using the dot to actually finger track. So it comes down to you as the practitioner to often be getting the children started at the right place by using this heavy duty board book. It can be bashed, it can be knocked over, it can really take it, it's sturdy. But what children take away from their carpet time, they'll want to practice in their reading corner. Have you seen that? How children want to go over it again? They want to repeat and make sense of it. So this is why these good solid board books where children are looking at their own zooming in part, it helps them focus on sounds that they have done and ones that they may be doing. An exciting time for children. But also we have the picture flashcards that, again, there's so much that can be done with these, because not only are we looking at the letter shapes, and you'll see that the vowels are in one color and the consonants in another color. And why is this important? We are not explicitly teaching at this point. These are vowels and these are consonants, but what we are doing is helping children make connections for when they use the Jolly Phonics plastic letters, which are also the same color, and when they move on to reception, they will understand that the differentiation has a purpose and a reason. But more than anything, children are looking at the illustrations, they're making connections with the letter and sound. Remember, it's the initial sound, and they're also introduced to this concept, which are the sound dots. Again, we are passively bringing that into our classes. We are explicitly probably saying, can you say the word ant, ant? Blending and segmenting will be all oral and modeled by the teacher. And some children get it. Some children focus on that and they're able to do it. If you have children that can do this, what an asset it is to the other children who can work with pair share, mirror, copy, and start to understand that concept. Although we are not heavily doing it, we are modeling it to the children. And let the children play with the cards. They're sturdy and they also can take a lot of movement. But we also have Jolly Classroom. And one good thing about Jolly Classroom is that it is a packed app, and it follows the 3 steps which mirror the books that we have for the Jolly Phonics program. The 3 pupils books are mirrored as the steps. But also what it can be used for is to support children in early years. Now, again, as I mentioned, we don't want young children being fully immersed into the Jolly Phonics program because they're not really ready for a lot of the concepts on there. But if your school has it, you can break it down to where it fits within your planning. And I'm going to show you a little bit of an example here. So if I go into my Jolly Phonics, whoops, let's go back here. If I go into my Jolly Classroom, and you can see I'm opening up my main page, and I'm just going to show you very briefly how we go over the 3 steps. Now, as you can see, this is just to show you it does become more amplified, more progressive with children's skills, but we are looking at older children. So I'm going to just focus on what I can use and how I can use it. So here you've got a little bit of an overview, and you can see where the assessments pop in, which are excellent to help with evaluation and also stopping children falling through the net. Now, if I go on to the activities page, this is a great overview of all the activities that I have. And you can see here, I can practice the sound. I can also get children to do the air letter, and they can put that together with the grapheme. I can scroll down and look for any letters that I want to revise and also introduce the new letter sound that I am doing. So this is a great visual for children to see. Also, when we're looking at letter formation, sometimes it is easy to see it. And again, I can pop into any of my lessons that I have done, and maybe I'm introduced, or I have introduced, my sound. And this is my focus. This is where I'm zooming in. And as you can see, the children can see the starting point, and they can also see the finishing point. Their eyes are going to be tracking the shape. Now, what I can do is invite children up to actually have a go. And of course, this takes a lot of hand-to-eye coordination and fine motor skills coordination as well. They're practicing. So we can do it in another color. And I might invite another child up to have a go. And they're doing a great job. Look at that. They've got the starting point. They know where to go. They're moving it around. That's brilliant. What an achievement for a small child. But what I can also do so they can see their work is I can get rid of the E, so I can get rid of the E, I can get rid of the grapheme, and they can see how their letters match up with the original one that came on the screen. And they've done a really good job, and I'd let them know that they've done a really good job. So we can practice handwriting here. But also what it is giving children is the opportunity to also practice next to that handwriting. Now, many of you may not have thought about doing something like this, where children have got the model on the side there and they can try freehand. Now, isn't that great? Not only have they done the tracking, they have done that, they've done it. And also you've got your teaching notes, which helps you understand what you need to do. So this is a great little activity for zooming in when I want children to focus in on that letter sound that we are doing in early years. We've done a lot of environmental sounds. We've done a lot with topic, maybe with stories, but now I just want to see if they really are getting the sounds. And also we can use other areas of the program as well. But as you can see, tuning in at this point is great because what children can do is it's within their ability. We have practiced the letter formation, we have practiced the sound, and we could listen to the song. And if we move on, we're going to see a nursery class. Whoops, we're going to see a nursery class.
Wipe your hands up, show me your actions. Done. What's this one? It's one of your favourite ones, isn't it? What's this one? Well done, you're doing such a good job. Lovely, keep going. Which one? Is it this one or the kite one? Kite one, well done. Is it pa or is it p? Is that, isn't it? Last one.
Now, as you can see, she was very good at asking the children, is it this one or that one? But we're using the program to get the children to exemplify their knowledge, talk about what they can see. Now, every single child in this class has English as a second language. Isn't that amazing? And what we are doing is getting them focused on the sound, focused on the grapheme, and they're using that multisensory approach. So think about using Jolly Classroom to support your lessons and also help you. Now, what we have got here is the bundle and how it all works. And you can see that we have various things in here. And I just want to run through in what use they have. We have the first letter sounds, and the first letter sounds, as I mentioned, is a great way for zooming in. Now, what I'm going to talk about here is about how you can use these to support your planning. And I'm going to open up in a minute for a Q&A, because I know that with some of the webinars, some of you have said we wanted a bit more time to ask questions. So I've allowed for that today. So before we move on to that, what have I got in my pack? So the first letter sounds is your durable hardboard book where you can have the children using this to follow through on their letter sounds that you have done by modeling, but also giving them time to be able to go through the book and also do the finger tracking, use the associated illustrations, and also it follows all of the 42 letter sounds. We have the wall freeze. The wall freeze is a great resource for children because we put it up. You can do it one letter at a sound. You can buy the freeze in its 7 different groups. You can cut them up and just have that on the board. It can be stuck up on the board. Children are making a connection not only with the grapheme, but they're also seeing the capital letter. Now remember, later on, as you can see here, later on, children will be doing capital letters when they go on to pupils' books 2, 3, and they will have to understand that that shape that they have learned at the beginning also has the same sound with a different shape. If you think of the grapheme for G, when it's a capital letter, it's a different shape, but it's the same sound. And also we have a context word, so the children can see in bold, this is the letter and this is my context word, and make a connection. Great visual resource. The picture flashcards are a great one because we can use them. They're more than a dual purpose. They can also be used to revise the letter sounds, but also introduce vocabulary. If you're working in a setting where English is an additional language, we constantly need to be building the vocabulary for children. And the best way to do that are with visual cues, so they're making a connection of what they see and what they hear. And what a great opportunity to have that incidental or initial sound with phonics if we're using the cards and also letting them play with them. They love to play with them and organize them. The bumper book would offer you a lot of ideas for arts and crafts, but what we think about mainly with the bumper book is it's following all the 42 sounds. It's giving you ideas to adapt. It's giving you things that you can add incidentally. Maybe you think about doing a big arts and crafts project every other month because it's a lot of work in an early years setting. We hope that this can give you some ideas, but also tick the other areas of the curriculum, which is hugely important with early years, so that children are not only learning those sounds, but they're also picking up other areas that can be integrated into your lesson. I've talked about the letters and how important they are, and you will notice that we have them so that the 2 letters making one sound are actually there as one unit, so children can see that and match it up with the wall freeze when they see it. And of course, the teacher's book. Now, the teacher's book is a great resource. We call it our Bible. But the most important thing for you planning it in early years is that it gives you the introduction of what is required to make it a successful delivery for young learners. It gives you the reason why. It tells you how, and it will also explain what to get to with the desired results. And remember, a lot of this has to fit the pace of your teaching, but also how many classes you have a week if you're doing focused teaching, but also where you want to get to. Now I'm going to open up, we have a 10 minutes to some Q&As, if that's okay with you, Ollie, because they're probably going to be channeled through both of us. And I'm going to go through, let's see if we can pin.
I've got a couple ready for you, if that would help.
Oh, wait, please go ahead.
So from Tracy Keeler, we had a question earlier, which was, would you introduce diagraphs to a 3 to 4-year-old or wait until reception?
That's a very good idea. Very, very, very good question, rather. Now, what we have noticed is that many early year settings prefer to just focus on the single sounds, so that children understand the concept that that single sound has a grapheme, and they wait till the children go into reception to tackle diagraphs. But as you will notice, many of the diagraphs are not at the beginning of a word, really, except we're looking at th and th, okay? But most of them tend to be in the middle of words, like A is in the middle of train and rail. And also we have O, which is in, or oi. So they tend to be in the middle of words or at the end of words. So I would focus, what we have seen the highest success rate is that children are aware that there are two letters making one sound, in that you have visible, that it's visible. But explicit teaching can be tricky, as young children are still developing their knowledge and their concept awareness of that shape has a sound, and if those go together, they make a word. It's a bit of a leap moving forward. And even when we get to Jolly Phonics, we always say, as you will notice in the app, we have strategically put in the assessments so that the first 3 groups are assessed, and we make sure children are really secure with those letter shapes and letter sounds before we move on to the diagraphs. So it's a very, very good question, and I would focus principally on getting the single sounds done first, because then if they've got that in place, it can move on successfully.
Amazing. Great answer. Just there's one other question as well that came up in the chat that might get missed otherwise, is it's an issue for me that in Spain, children start learning in capital letters first. Any ideas how to address that? And that came from Natalia, but it also came from a couple of other people as well around the world. So I know you've got a lot of experience in Spain yourself, so I thought that might be a good question for you to take on.
Well, what you'll notice if you use the wall freeze is that we have capital letters alongside the small letters. And I taught in Spain for many, many years. And the one thing I used to do is draw attention that the children could see on the wall frieze that from their lengua lessons and their libro de lectura, all of that, they could see on the wall frieze where we had the capital letter alongside the lower case letter. So this was very explicit at this time. I had to make this an explicit teaching point within the Spanish classroom because the children did learn the capital letters first. But then, as I've mentioned, if you can see it, and we also have the posters as well, if you can see that the capital letter has another little grapheme, which is the same sound, explicitly highlighting these at the beginning of my class or running through doing the sounds and then the focus sounds. That was one way that the children began to make that connection, that the capital letter also had a small letter that had the same sound. And actually, Ollie, this would probably be a really good webinar to look at how we can use our resources to fit international dynamics. So that's given me a great idea for another webinar. But what I would say is, please use our resource, use the wall freeze. And also what you will find is in the pupil books is exactly the same. And if any of you buy our classroom kits, you'll get the handbook where the photocopiables are exactly the same. Draw attention to that capital letter and the lowercase letter if the children are being introduced to it in lengua. Then does that sound logical? Because that's what I used to have to do.
Yeah, I think there's a few responses in here. It's hard to keep up with them.
Yeah.
So I hope that answered the question. if anyone's stuck on those things, please feel free to email us, Yvonne or Ollie at jollylearning.co.uk. We're really happy to take those questions on. I'm just going to go through a couple of questions here that we've got. It's from an anonymous attendee. But do we introduce the 26 letter sounds first and then continue with the remaining sounds to complete the 42 sounds, or is it taught per the order given for the ages 4 to 5 years? And I think that's a real phonics piece of info.
When we're not teaching the alphabet, we are the design of the way the letters are introduced is for a specific purpose. And the idea that we have the letter sound groups is so that children can be getting used to blending and segmenting, but also reading CVC words pretty quickly. Our authors have said that after the first 6 sounds, children would be able to read a variety of words, up to 30 words. Our challenge in the international environment is comprehension. But remember, what we are also doing is getting pronunciation. Children are understanding the short and the long vowels. So it's important, for example, with the alphabet, these are all long vowel sounds, A, B, C, D, E. These are long vowel sounds. And we need children to be aware of the short vowel sounds before they move on to the long vowel sounds. And many of the long vowel sounds tend to be like digraphs. So I would stick to the order of the letters. Also, this follows how the program resources have been orientated and designed to support you as you are moving forward with the children understanding that letters have sounds and those can go together. It's like a learning spiral, really. So if you change the order, or if you move away from that, you could be complicating your own planning, but also your own desired outcomes. If you decide that in your first term, your children are very small and it's challenging, and you only want to do either the first 2 letter sound groups, that's fine. The key to it is do it well. It's better that the children learn really well. They have that concrete knowledge, because when they move up to reception, they're going to fly. They're going to fly. So don't use the alphabetic system or the where the letters work. Please stick to the program. Thank you. That's a good question, a very good question.
There's a good one here. Maybe time for a lesson. Sangeetha, could you please clarify the sound of the sound all, as in ALL?
All, yes, that comes from the or sound. So we start with children doing or, first of all, OR, and then they go on to their alternatives, which is or is in autumn, or is in awful, and or is in talk. Now remember, the TALK. So when you have all, that really is just one sound. You've got the 2 L's. It's not l, it's all. So it comes from the or sound. But that's quite advanced for young children, and we wouldn't really go into that. But what we do with the Jolly Phonics is we really make sure they have the 42 sounds in place and the digraphs in place, and then we move on to the alternatives. And then when we move on to Jolly Literacy, we expand and we expand. So they're all, so you can hear the sounds there. But yeah, it's a great question. And again, this is making me think that we could do a little bit more on how the alternatives work. That would be a great webinar, wouldn't it? The alternatives, because children need to have that reinforcements, and teachers also would like a bigger explanation. So we've got a couple of ideas, Ollie.
Yeah, definitely. And another question around capitals, and should it be written in capitals or small letters as well? That's come up again. And there's a couple of other questions in here as well. Let me pick another one. After which group do we introduce the tricky words?
Oh, well, tricky words are only, well, that's group 6, and that is with the Jolly Phonics program. And we introduced them in group 6 because by then children will have had a good foundation with the previous letter sound groups, and we'll be very familiar with the letters that are in tricky words, because we look for the tricky part, don't we? We always look for the tricky part. We don't like to introduce them beforehand, although we do know that in some curriculum or schools, if children are much older, they grasp the concept quicker. So it depends with your ages of children. But remember, all the reading resources are aligned to fit in with the tricky words coming in at group 6. So that's where you'll find that with our decodables, they're in line with that delivery of the program. So when we think about how we teach children, all the support material is fitted around to go with children's ability and what they've learned and how they can use that. And introducing tricky words too early could be quite difficult because they haven't learned all the letter sounds that are in the tricky words, the ones that we can break down. And I saw a quick question there when somebody said, is it all right to do single sounds? Well, I have to say that we saw great successes in early years where children were focusing on doing the Jolly Phonics sequence of the letter sounds and focusing on the first 3 groups and then moving on in reception. So again, it depends on your unique teaching environment and also how you do your planning, but keep to the program in its original format of delivery. Well, we've had some great questions, haven't we?
Yeah, lots, and fantastic. I'm sorry we maybe can't answer them all today, but we're on time and we like to finish on time because we know how busy everyone is.
Yeah.
I'd like to say a huge thank you to Yvonne, who puts a huge amount of effort into these every single month. So
Well,
thank
it's
you.
just lovely to be able to share, and more than anything, it's just widening your knowledge on how you can use the resources in a wonderful way. And if you have got some resources within the school, you can bring them down further on. And also, as we are really stretching out our resources for early years and making it easier for you to buy a pack and how to use them, of course, we'll be developing our training to support you as well. And thank you, as always, everyone who attends. You are wonderful teachers, and we never forget how much effort you put into
Yeah,
teaching all our global kids. So thank you
thank
very
you.
much for joining us.
The recording will be shared over email tomorrow, maybe the day after, depends on when we've finished editing it and making me look gorgeous on every shot. We'll hopefully share that very soon over email to everyone who registered. There's a couple of questions, one around training. You can find loads of information about training programs over on our website. I won't go into the different details of it. There's lots of different training options there, and there are lots more coming. Secondly, lots of people asking about certificates, something I'm trying to resolve for these sessions because it feels like it's important. So I'm listening, just trying to work out how we do that. It's not easy when you've got sort of 1,000 people registering for these things. So just want to make sure we do it well. We look forward to seeing you all again. You'll see our latest events over on jollylearning.com. And for any of you who want to have a trial of Jolly Classroom, you just have to type in jollyclassroom.com and you can get a free trial. It'll give you access to, I think, the first three groups and the assessments. So you get plenty to play with and to start with and to begin your journey using that alongside our incredible print offering as well. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. And I look forward to seeing you all again soon, yeah?
And thank you. You've given us ideas for future webinars, which we really do like. So thank you very much, and bye for now.